Can you imagine a nightmare so profound, so utterly dehumanizing, that an estimated 10 million lives were extinguished? Not by war, not by natural disaster, but by the calculated, systematic greed of a single man. This isn't some ancient, forgotten genocide shrouded in myth. This horror unfolded at the height of so-called enlightened European civilization, less than 150 years ago. Forget what you think you know about colonial Africa, because the truth of the Congo Free State is a story deliberately suppressed, a stain so deep it fundamentally alters our understanding of human cruelty and complicity. Have you ever considered that the chocolate you eat, the rubber in your tires, might be built upon a foundation of unimaginable suffering, silenced for generations? Because today, we're not just telling a story, we're unearthing a Holocaust, a forgotten chapter so shocking it will make you question everything you thought you knew about power, propaganda, and the terrifying depths of human depravity. What if the greatest crime against humanity was perpetrated not by a crazed dictator, but by a philanthropic king, draped in the guise of progress? The answers are far more disturbing than you could ever possibly imagine. For decades, we've been fed a sanitized, almost romanticized version of the scramble for Africa. A polite partitioning of a continent, a necessary step in bringing civilization to the uncivilized. But what historians often gloss over, what the textbooks conveniently omit, is the darkest secret born from that era, the unfathomable terror unleashed upon the heart of Africa, a terror orchestrated not by a nation, but by one man's private empire. This isn't just a tale of colonial exploitation. It's an exposé of unchecked avarice that morphed into industrial-scale atrocity, a meticulous dismantling of human dignity on a scale rarely witnessed. We're talking about the Congo Free State, the personal fiefdom of King Leopold II of Belgium. His reign over this vast territory, a land 80 times the size of his own country, was presented to the world as a noble humanitarian mission, a benevolent endeavor to abolish slavery and bring progress to the African people. But the truth is far more disturbing than you think. Beneath this glittering veneer of philanthropy lay a system of exploitation so brutal, so ruthlessly efficient, that it resulted in the deaths of millions, leaving a legacy of horror that continues to echo through the generations. Prepare to peel back the layers of deception, because the true story of the Congo Free State is a chilling testament to how easily the world can be fooled, and how swiftly humanity can descend into hell when, greed is given absolute power. And the most shocking revelation? The global community knew, yet did very little for far too long. So why did this horror unfold? To understand the genesis of this unparalleled crime, we must first transport ourselves to the late 19th century, a time rife with European imperial ambitions. The continent of Africa, a vast treasure trove of resources and untapped markets, became the ultimate prize in what was known as the scramble for Africa. European powers, fueled by industrial revolution demands and nationalistic fervor, carved up the continent with reckless abandon. Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, all were snatching up territories, but one man felt left out: King Leopold II of Belgium, a monarch of a small, relatively insignificant European nation. Leopold harbored colossal ambitions, a burning desire for personal glory and immense wealth. He envied the vast colonial possessions of his European counterparts, and saw Africa not as a continent of diverse peoples and cultures, but as an enormous, untapped resource waiting to be plundered. Leopold was a master manipulator, a PR genius centuries ahead of his time. He couldn't simply declare war and seize a territory. His small nation lacked the military might and the political leverage. So, he devised a cunning, insidious plan. He cultivated an image as a benevolent philanthropist, establishing the International African Association in 1876, ostensibly dedicated to humanitarian goals. eradicating slavery, bringing Christianity and opening the continent to civilizing influences. This was his Trojan horse. He convinced the major European powers at the infamous Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 that his intentions were pure, that the Congo Basin would be a free trade zone governed by an international charitable organization. In a stunning display of diplomatic chicanery, Leopold, through his carefully crafted facade, managed to persuade the world to grant him personal sovereignty over an area of land roughly the size of Western Europe. Think about that for a moment. An entire continent's destiny decided by men in suits, drawing lines on a map, and one man, a king, was given a vast private empire, shielded by the pretense of humanitarianism. Little did anyone outside of his immediate, ruthless circle comprehend the true, horrifying purpose behind this philanthropic venture. The world believed his lies. What happened next would redefine human cruelty. Here's where it gets truly dark. 1. Once Leopold had secured his private kingdom, he swiftly dropped the pretense of philanthropy. The International African Association was merely a front for what became the Congo Free State, his personal corporate enterprise. His goal was simple: extract maximum wealth, primarily rubber and ivory, at any cost. To achieve this, he created a brutal private army, the Force Publique, an army comprised largely of Congolese conscripts, often taken as children and forced into service alongside European officers who were given free rein to enforce Leopold's will with savage brutality. These weren't soldiers fighting for a nation. They were enforcers of a system designed for pure, unadulterated resource extraction. Their mandate was clear: meet the quotas or face unimaginable consequences. The system was horrifyingly simple and brutally effective. Leopold imposed impossible quotas on the Congolese population for the collection of wild rubber, a commodity suddenly in high demand for the burgeoning bicycle and automobile industries. Every village, every individual, was assigned a specific amount of rubber they had to collect and deliver. Failure to meet these quotas was met with swift, barbaric punishment. This wasn't just about fines or imprisonment. It was about terror. The Force Publique would raid villages, take women and children hostage, hold them captive until the male villagers produced their quota. If they still failed, the consequences were unthinkable. What happened next will shock you to your core. The most infamous symbol of Leopold's reign of terror was the severed hand. To prove that bullets, an expensive commodity, were not being wasted on hunting animals or for rebellion, but were used to kill lazy or rebellious natives, the Force Publique officers demanded proof. That proof was human hands. Soldiers, often under pressure themselves to meet ammunition counts, would hack off the hands of their victims, men, women, and even children, presenting them to their superiors. Sometimes, the hands were merely proof of punishment, not necessarily killing. Imagine the terror. A child whose father failed to bring enough rubber might find their own small hand severed, left to bleed out, a chilling message for the rest of the community. One missionary, Reverend John Harris, famously recounted seeing a basket filled with 160 severed hands brought to him by a local chief, begging for help. He wrote, "I have just returned from a journey to the Upper Congo, where I saw, with my own eyes, sights that are indescribable. The air was filled with the stench of human despair and the metallic tang of drying blood. But the atrocities didn't stop there. Villages were burned, entire communities massacred for resistance. Cannibalism, sometimes forced upon local populations by the Force Publique as a means of further terror and dehumanization, became a horrifying tool of control in some areas. Children were enslaved, forced into labor, or sent to les camps d'enfants, children's camps, where mortality rates were astronomically high. The landscape itself became a graveyard, the rubber vines watered with the blood and tears of an entire people. Population plummeted from an estimated 20 million at the start of Leopold's reign to perhaps half that number by 1920. 10 million lives vanished. 10 million stories silenced. The scale of this devastation is almost impossible to comprehend. A statistic so vast it numbs the mind, yet each number represents a human being who endured unimaginable suffering before a brutal, agonizing end. This is where everything went wrong. The sheer scale of the horror, the casual cruelty, the dehumanization. It wasn't just tolerated, it was systematically implemented. Leopold's agents, men like Léon Rome, whose grotesque gardens were rumored to be decorated with the heads of native chiefs, embodied the depravity of the system. Rome, a former hotel manager turned colonial administrator, became infamous for his ruthlessness, inspiring characters in fictional works like Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. His methods were extreme, even by the standards of the force publique, showcasing the total moral collapse that characterized the Congo Free State. Little did the world know that while Leopold was commissioning grand public works in Belgium, funded by this brutal exploitation, his private army was burning villages, executing slackers, and severing limbs in the heart of Africa. The rubber, the ivory, the profits, it all flowed back to Belgium, enriching Leopold and a select few, building monuments and palaces while the Congo itself was transformed into a living hell. The psychological trauma inflicted during this period, the breakdown of social structures, the deep-seated fear and distrust, these wounds would fester for generations, shaping the future of an entire nation. The ripple effects of this profound violence continue to manifest in the political instability and resource conflicts that plague the region even today. Now, you might be asking, how could the world let this happen? How could such widespread atrocities remain hidden? The answer lies in a masterclass of propaganda and systematic suppression. Leopold employed an army of public relations agents, journalists, and lobbyists to paint a glowing picture of his civilizing mission. He published lavish books, funded newspapers, and cultivated influential figures, all to ensure his narrative of benevolent progress was the dominant one. Any dissenting voices were swiftly dismissed as exaggerations, lies, or the ramblings of anti-colonial fanatics. For years this strategy worked. The sheer audacity of his humanitarian claims made it difficult for people to believe the whispers of horror. But the truth, like blood, eventually seeps through even the thickest concrete. The first cracks in Leopold's carefully constructed facade began to appear thanks to a few courageous individuals. One such hero was George Washington Williams, an African-American journalist and former soldier who traveled to the Congo in 1890, initially hoping to promote emigration for Black Americans. What he found horrified him. He penned an open letter to His Serene Majesty Leopold II, King of the Belgians and sovereign of the independent state of Congo, a damning indictment of Leopold's rule, detailing the atrocities he witnessed. His report, however, was largely ignored or dismissed as biased by a compliant international press. Then came Edmund Dean Morel, a British shipping clerk. Morel noticed a peculiar discrepancy in the cargo manifests. Ships arriving in Belgium from the Congo were laden with immense quantities of rubber and ivory, while ships returning to the Congo carried almost nothing but arms, ammunition, and force public officers. There was no reciprocal trade, no evidence of the free trade and development Leopold claimed. This stark imbalance led Morel to conclude that the Congo Free State was not engaged in trade, but in pure, unadulterated plunder. He quit his job and dedicated his life to exposing Leopold's crimes, forming the Congo Reform Association. He rallied support, published articles, and tirelessly campaigned becoming a relentless thorn in Leopold's side. Another pivotal figure was Roger Casement, an Irish diplomat. In 1903, the British government, prompted by growing concerns and morals, relentless campaigning, dispatched Casement to investigate. Casement's report, published in 1904, was a devastating indictment, confirming the horrific scale of the atrocities, the forced labor, the mutilations, and the depopulation. His meticulous, factual account, coming from an official government source, made it impossible for the world to continue ignoring the truth. The outrage finally began to grow. Mark Twain, Arthur Conan Doyle, Joseph Conrad, all lent their voices to the cause, joining the chorus of condemnation. The sheer weight of evidence gathered by these brave individuals finally broke through Leopold's wall of lies. The chilling truth, once revealed, sent shockwaves through the world. But even then, the wheels of justice turned agonizingly slowly. The hidden consequences of Leopold's reign extend far beyond the millions dead. In 1908, facing immense international pressure and the threat of intervention, Leopold was finally forced to relinquish his personal control over the Congo, selling it to the Belgian government. The Congo Free State officially became the Belgian Congo. But was it truly an end to the horror? Not entirely. While the grotesque excesses of the force publique were somewhat curtailed, the exploitative system of resource extraction continued, albeit under a different guise. The Congolese people were still subjected to forced labor, racial segregation, and a paternalistic colonial system that denied them education, political rights, and economic autonomy. The damage was done. The social fabric of countless communities had been irrevocably torn apart. Generations grew up without parents, without traditions, without hope. The psychological scars of this period, the deep-seated mistrust of authority, the trauma of violence, the cultural erosion, profoundly impacted the nation's ability to build a stable, unified future after independence in 1960. This dark chapter also has chilling modern connections. The Congo, a land immensely rich in resources like copper, diamonds, cobalt, essential for our modern electronics, continues to be plagued by conflict and instability, a stark legacy of its colonial past. The artificial borders drawn by European powers, the extractive economic models, and the imposition of foreign rule created a fragile foundation that has contributed to ongoing violence and humanitarian crises. The silence surrounding Leopold's atrocities, the way it was systematically downplayed and played, European historical narratives, represents a deliberate historical revisionism that continues to deny the full truth to generations. We rarely see Leopold II mentioned in the same breath as Hitler or Stalin, yet his actions led to comparable, if not greater, loss of life. Why? Because he was a king, and his crimes were committed under the banner of civilization. The heroes who fought to expose him, like Morel and Casement, often remain footnotes, their monumental struggle overlooked. The true cost of our global economy, the unseen suffering in distant lands, often remains hidden unless we actively seek to uncover it. But wait, there's one detail I haven't told you yet. Despite the undeniable evidence, despite the millions of lives lost, King Leopold II himself never faced justice. He died a wealthy, respected monarch, his reputation largely intact in Belgium, having carefully destroyed most incriminating documents before the handover to the Belgian state. His statues still stand in Belgium, a constant, unsettling reminder of a history deliberately unexamined. Before you go, remember this. History isn't just a collection of dates and names. It's a living, breathing narrative, constantly being shaped and reshaped. And sometimes, the most profound truths are found in the darkest, most uncomfortable corners, hidden not by accident, but by design. If this dark chapter of history shocked you, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And comment below. I read every single comment and would love to hear your thoughts on this disturbing piece of history. and what other forgotten atrocities you believe the world needs to remember.